Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Jenny Arnold from PPM Works, and today we are going to be talking about connecting Microsoft Planner to Power BI. Typically, we have the need to report on our project progress, and many organizations are using Planner as a nice lightweight tool to track those project tasks. And although Planner itself has lots of capability visually to show where tasks are and how they align with expectations, we often want to show a visual representation of those because, as we know, sometimes executives don't want to read all the details. They just want to see a high-level overview of what the progress of the project is. So we'll be going through first just an introduction to Power BI. We're going to be using Power BI Desktop in today's demonstration, and we'll talk about how we integrate that with Planner. For the purposes of this demonstration, integration is actually quite a strong word. What we're really going to be doing in today's demo is showing how to export a plan to Excel and then using that as the data source in Power BI. It's a really easy and lightweight way to report across the entire plan. And then we can touch at the end of the video, we can touch on how we can also take this to the next level, and we could create a Power Automate so that you could just extract all of your plan data into a SharePoint library. That's going to be an option. We won't be getting into those details today on the demonstration, but you can reach out to us at info@ppmworks.com if you're interested in learning a bit more about how that would work. Okay, so let's get started. First, let's take a look at Planner itself, okay? So for the purposes of this demonstration, we're using good old Contoso, Microsoft's demo environment, and I am using the user account of Megan Bowen. If you all use Contoso, then you are very familiar with all of these folks who are users on this Contoso environment. We have an event plan here on the Contoso Electronics environment. And so this is the detailed plan that I'm going to be using in my Power BI report. Okay. Now what I've done here on the event plan is I've gone to this drop-down menu here and I've exported the plan to Excel. For me, I've just saved it to my download folder. And then what we can do when we go into Power BI, so I'm in Power BI Desktop here, you can go, and I'll expand this window just so you can see a little bit more, and I go and I get data, and it is literally the very first common data source that's listed, okay? When we go to connect to that data source, I'll show you what that looks like. I've gone to Event Plan here, and it will show you the two tables that are present on that, sometimes called queries, that are present on that. We can see what each of those look like. So this is just going to be the plan name, the plan ID. This is the unique identifier, the GUID of that plan, and the date of export. I exported it just earlier today to prepare for this meeting. And then there's the tasks table that has all of really the good stuff, as they say. Okay, so the plan was created by the mod admin account on that Contoso environment, created just about less than a month ago. Okay, you can see if the tasks are recurring or if they're late, the completed date of the tasks, and if so, who completed that task. Okay, if there were checklists on any of these planned tasks, they would show here as well, and they'd be expandable. Different labels that are used, descriptions, and so forth, okay? So I've already done this connection. What I did was I checked both of these, and then I clicked load. That's already been done, so I'm going to cancel this now, and I'm going to show you what that data looks like over here. So these are the two, this is the plan name table that we talked about, but this is the good stuff, all the task details that we are going to want to report on, okay? So I'm going to just close these panels just so that you can see this a little bit larger, okay? What I've done here is I have added a basic task table with task name, bucket, due date, whether or not it's late. You can see that this is an icon. I'm going to show you how to do that. And to whom the task is assigned, okay? And then I've added a pie chart here for late tasks, a pie chart for task buckets so we can see how many tasks are in each bucket, so that if you had a particular manager, perhaps who was, someone who was your press manager, someone who was responsible for all the details at the venue, someone who was managing travel, maybe that would be helpful for your buckets. Of course, in Planner, you can decide whatever buckets you want to use or how you want to label those. That's up to you. And then we have task progress here by month. So whether they're completed, in progress, or not started. Let's get underway for how we can create this and replicate it. I've created a new page here on my report. And now what I'm going to do is expand the data panel. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start out by selecting a few fields. By default, what will happen is if you select, say, the task name, it's automatically going to put it in a table. Okay, so we're going to let it do that. If we go to the visualizations here and I select this table, okay, you can see it's kind of hard to see here, but this is the visual that has been selected. Okay, so I'm going to stretch this visual just a bit. Okay, and we can add the due date of this. Now, when we first add a date here into Power BI, it's automatically going to break it down into the hierarchy of that date. We don't need the date hierarchy. We just need the plain old due date. So we're going to put that in here. Okay. We're also going to add the assigned to field, and we're going to add the progress. Now, I realize in my other visual, I really want to see the progress to the left of the assigned to, so I can do that by just dragging this field up higher and putting it here instead. Okay? Now, as you can see here, the progress of this task doesn't indicate whether it's late or on time. It just simply shows what the progress is. So what I can do is I can add the late column as well, and that's going to show whether the task is late or not by false or true. Now, that's not terribly helpful. You can't see really quickly, oh, do I have any late tasks or not? So what I've done here instead is I've created a new field that's going to measure whether the task is late or not. Okay, I'm not going to be able to do any conditional formatting here based on a field that just is a true or a false value with these words in it. So instead, what I've done is I've created a task is late field here with DAX. And so I've just said if the task is late, set it to it. If the task late equals true, so if it is true, then set the value of this field to 1. Otherwise, set it to 0. And then what it allows me to do here is I can go here to this column and I can set conditional formatting. I can set it to an icon. And now what I can do is I can base this on this new field that I've created in the task table. And it is task is late. And it's just going to be a field value. Take that back. It's going to be rules. Okay. So task is late. I am only going to show an icon. And then I'm going to change these to equals. Equals. I only have 2 possible options. It's either 1 or 0. So I'm going to set these to number. Okay, so equals 1 would be late is true. So we want that one to show as the red. Or if it's 0, we want that to show as green. Now I'll tell you, I happen to like using different shapes because this accommodates for anyone who's colorblind. They can see that it is a diamond if it's late, or it's a circle if it is green. Okay. And then we can set to icon only, equals number, and then we'll be able to click OK. All right, now let's take a look. This is not allowing me to click OK, but I want to point out to you that this is perfectly normal. Even as I do this, I work in these Power BI reports every day. I sometimes have to remind myself, okay, how should that setting be made? And this is why I prepare these ahead of time. So I'm going to go to the icons, and we're going to see its rule, and it's set to sum of task is late, applied to values only. Okay, so let's go back here. We're going to do the same thing again. and we're going to go to late, conditional formatting, icons. We're going to base it on task is late field. Sum of task is late is just fine. Okay. We're going to set it to icon only. And then we're going to set these to number. Number equals 1 equals 0. Set these to equals 1, 0. Okay. We'll change this to green and then we'll delete this. And this time it worked. I did everything the same, but sometimes you just have to make sure that you're setting everything. Sometimes you need to go back in again. And as you can see, this time it worked. Okay. So now we have that single late task. Close this so you can see it a little bit larger, is showing as a red diamond instead. Okay. Now you may look at this and you may think, well, that's an awful detailed due date there. Well, what we can do is we can change the format of that so it's not that full lengthy due date. We do that by just clicking to highlight this particular field here on the right hand side. And then the format window will come up and we can change this to a short date. Okay. Because the data set is really small, that happens really quickly. Sometimes it will take a little bit longer for that change to take effect. Okay. So now let's try adding, we're going to add another visual. So we want to make sure we've always clicked into a blank spot on the report before we click a visual. Otherwise, what will happen is if you have one of these selected and then I switched it to a pie chart, it would actually switch this visual that already exists. So we want to click in a blank spot and we're going to select a pie chart. And then what we're going to do is we are going to add a late pie chart here. Okay, so for our values, the value is going to consist of the count. So that's going to be the values here is just going to be the count of the task ID. If we want to measure late, we're going to add a late legend here, either true or false, and then it will pull in those values automatically. Okay, so now what it's doing is it's dividing up. We can add details too. Okay, so we can see, okay, any task that is late is set to true. Any task that is false is set to false. It's not late. Okay, and this light blue color is the bulk of the tasks here. Okay, but maybe this isn't as helpful. Let's make this a little bit larger so you can see it better. These colors aren't so helpful. Maybe the percents aren't as helpful. So let's instead change these detail labels. Okay, right now it's showing the data value and the percent of the total. We could instead show the category so we can see it's true or it's false. Okay, we can see the percent or we can see just what the data value is. So we've got 1 that's true and 15 that's false. Okay, for those data labels, we go to the detail labels section here too, and the values. We can increase this font size. Okay, so we can make these a little bit easier to read. I don't know about you, but I have old eyes, so I like things to be a little bit larger. Okay, and we can do the same thing for the legend. We can increase the font size on the legend as well. Okay, and that makes that visual a little bit larger. Okay, and then when we look at the values here, at the detail labels and then the values, you should be able to see those colors. Got to find where those are. I often have to click through these several times before I can find exactly. Here we go. They're actually in the slices. Okay, so if we want the slices of those pies, the true is the dark blue right now. Maybe we want to show that more as a red color. Okay, and maybe we want the false to show more as of a green color. Okay, so that better aligns with what we're representing up here. Okay, so now we have the count of the task ID by late and late. That's a really good title for this pie chart, don't you think? No, I don't think so. So let's change that, okay? So we could just simply call it count of late tasks. And that's it. And we can do the same thing here. We can increase this. We can even change the label font if we want to, the title font. Okay. Now I might want another pie chart, but I've done tons of work on this pie chart already. So what I could actually do is with this pie chart selected, I can now do Control C on my screen, on my keyboard, click someplace else on my screen in my report, a blank spot, and do Control V. So now I've got two pie charts here. And what I can do here now is rather than the legend being if it's late, I could perhaps just set it to what the bucket is. Maybe I just want to see this divided by bucket. Okay, and then I can remove the late tasks. Okay, and the same thing here for bucket, I want to bring this into the details and replace it. So now I can see I have 4 team travel tasks, 4 that are involving the venue, 3 that are involving the press, 3 regarding the presentation that we need to do, and then just 4 that are in the general to-do bucket. These are the to-do is when you don't have a bucket at all and when you just left it at the default. Now, maybe we also want to track, as I've showed on page 1 here, this task progress by month. Okay, so this is a stacked bar chart where we're counting the progress by month. Okay, so let's do that. So let's go to a blank section here. We're going to do the stacked bar chart here. And this time, let's just take a look again. Okay, if I select this one, I can see that my x-axis, my y-axis is the due date, and my x-axis is the count of progress. So let's just do the x-axis first, and we'll put progress in there. Okay, so that's just a plain count of progress. And then my y-axis is going to be the due date. Now, what's tricky here is it's going to default to the topmost of this due date hierarchy. That doesn't help us too much if it's only just a task and progress on a planner that is, spans over a few months rather than over a few years. And so what we can do is we can remove the year. Now, this at least shows we do have data that is in Q1 and Q2, but we're going to eliminate the quarter and we're only going to show the month. Okay, so now we've got February, March, April, May. Okay, well, that's great. This shows that we have this many that are by count and the count of progress. But what we need to see in the legend is that progress as well, so that it will divvy those up. So now I've got completed, in progress, and not started. Now for these, this color coding is pretty good. Orange for you haven't even started yet, and it's March. That's sort of a cautionary tale to me as a manager. So those colors are pretty decent, but you can do the same thing here, and you can change those colors if you like to. Okay, so we've got the legend here is in the top left. The text on the legend, we can increase that a bit if we want those to be a bit larger. Okay, we can look at the title. We can change that title again. Okay, if we go to general, that's where your overall title is going to be. So we might want to call those tasks by progress. Okay, that's a little bit clearer, and we can increase that size as well. Okay, so now in just a couple of steps, you can see we're only about 18 minutes into the demonstration here. We've created a pretty decent visual representation of all of the planner tasks that we have in this particular plan. Okay, if we wanted to, we can add a title up at the top. But what you could do is, because this works based on a particular Excel export, you could then copy this page and change the data set for each of these pages to show based on the Excel file that is the export for each of your plans. Now keep in mind, as I mentioned, with Power Automate, what you could do is you could automate that export from Planner to a set of Excel sheets that work for each of your plans, and then you could use that SharePoint library as your data source here, and you could have a much more automated technique for exporting that data. Say on a daily basis, you could have it a recurring Power Automate that runs several times a day, or once a day, maybe even just once a month, if you want to regenerate this with fresh data. so that if you needed to show this to executives or your team so that you can present a visual representation of all the hard work you're doing in Planner, show that you have no late tasks, if you want to make sure that you update this first, you can always just go and refresh that data set if it's connected to the SharePoint library. And then you're going to be able to much more quickly pull out what you need to from your Planner plan. We hope that this presentation helped you. We understand why you might want to integrate. Just keep in mind you should subscribe to our YouTube channel because we do these visuals once a week typically, and we have new ideas. You can always comment on our YouTube videos as well, and you can always reach out to us at info@ppmworks.com if you are looking for more information. I can show you that we have some upcoming webinars. Advanced Project Portfolio Management in OnePlan will be next week, so I'll be hosting that one. And then we have advanced features in Planner like labels, buckets, and priority settings. We could bring these in as well. I touched on those when I showed you the data sets, how labels are available too. So that can lead to you being able to provide even more details in your Power BI reports. And then we'll get to mastering project budgeting and financial management on April 9th. And getting into April 16th, officially into spring now as of next week, then we're going to be able to manage multiple projects with Microsoft Project and Planner. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you found this video helpful, and don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions.